Blade and Sorcery. Blade and Sorcery VR is a game I wish I had tried long ago. I've been playing VR for about a year now and never wanted to touch this game because I'm not a big fan of magic. But Steam had a sale, so I figured I might as well try it, and boy am I glad I did. This is one of the few games that makes getting a VR headset actually worth it. From the physics-based fighting to the truly stunning graphics, it really does make you feel like you're fighting in medieval times. There are two different modes that this game has to offer. The first and the main one is the Crystal Hunt mode. This is their campaign type of game that has a lot of progression involved, including boss battles, loot you can find around and in some chests, and a shop where you can buy different weapons, armor, and sell the loot that you found throughout your Outpost runs. The other mode is Sandbox Mode. This mode is pretty self-explanatory. You can just go in there, choose any weapon, any armor in the game, and they have a ton of different preset waves of enemies that you can choose from. You can do a duel with a knight, you can protect a VIP from assassinations, the list just goes on and on. But first, we're going to talk about the Crystal Hunt mode. I haven't even gotten close to finishing it, but I'm in love. You start out in a house where you can store weapons, items, and armor, and a separate room to upgrade your spells. The main premise of the game is you go around clearing outposts that are occupied by different groups. You'll typically start out in a safe spot where you can gather your thoughts before you go on a vicious killing spree. The whole outpost is essentially a dungeon that you have to traverse your way through. Sometimes there's climbing involved, and sometimes you even need to swim. After you fell off trying to swing across a gap. Once you eventually either kill all the residents or run past them, you'll get to the end where there's a door with a lot of loot behind it, along with a new map of an outpost you unlocked. And I love clearing these outposts. I could do it all day. You never really have the same dungeon twice because they have a bunch of different generated seeds they use for the map that make them all different. But after you're done with the outpost and you get on the boat to go back home, you can travel to Baron's shop on the map. When you're at the shop, you can sell all the loot you found and make some money, and the shop has so many options in terms of weapons. Pretty much anything you can think of, you'll usually find there. From shields to swords, to bows to axes, to knives, to even wooden sticks in the shape of a sword. They really have it all. But anyways, on the travel map, you have a certain amount of map pieces you have to collect. You get these from the end of outposts. And once you get all the map pieces you need, you unlock the boss fight. And the boss fight in this game is amazing. You have to clear a whole dungeon of normal enemies first, and once you get to the boss battle room, you're face to face with this ginormous rock monster. Once he wakes up, you start to see pink glowing crystals on him. There are a few you need to destroy at the start, but once you get all of those ones, the rest of them have force fields around them. But you'll notice around the outside of the arena, there are big crystals with force fields around them. But one of them will be open, exposing the crystal inside. When you destroy the crystal on the outer edge of the arena, the boss will fall to his knees in weakness. You need to take advantage of this moment to run up there and get the crystal that now opened up. After you do this a couple times and destroy all the crystals, he will fall down for one final time. You need to run up to him and stab his face to expose his final crystal, which you need to grab and pull out of his head. Once you do that, he'll explode and you will have what they call a prismatic crystal. In the next room, you'll see an altar and it will light up when you bring the crystal close. You then get to choose a new spell or to upgrade an existing one. They have fire, gravity, lightning, mind, and body. This is the one I chose because, as I said earlier, I'm not really into magic. Then you get this really awesome cutscene of the crystal being activated. Once you go back home with your new crystal, you can put it in the altar in that separate room I was telling you about before. This is where you choose your new upgrades for your spells. To beat the game, you have to complete 6 different boss battles to light up all the things at the gate. I assume. I've never done it before and I don't want to spoil it, so I haven't googled it, but I assume that's the end. But the Crystal Hunt mode is insanely fun and I could play it all day. Alright, now we're going to talk about the Sandbox Mode. I just got done playing and saying I had a blast would be an understatement. You start out in the house just like before, however this time when you go to the travel map you have a selection of sandbox maps to choose from. Once you decide on a map and load in, you'll find the book that's in your house as well. Here is where you have every single item in the game at your disposal. Of course I immediately grabbed the coolest looking sword, shield, and armor I could and posed with it. Anyway, the first wave I decided to do was a duel against all different types of enemies. It starts with the weak and progressively gets harder until you're fighting the hardest enemies. The first fights were a breeze, my sword cut through them like butter. However, when I got to the metal armored enemies, I was no longer able to easily cut or stab them. I love these kind of fights in this game because it's way more challenging to duel someone and actually have to block all of their attacks while you still land yours. And you also have to keep an eye out for a weak point like in the armpits where they lack armor. At one point I even unarmed my enemy and decided to let them pick their sword back up to continue with a fair fight. I unarmed another one too, but decided not to give them the same fate. The next battle I decided to do was the progressive Gauntlet. This one has 60 enemies total, spawning 4 at a time. This one is similar to the last one in that it starts with the weak enemies and progressively gets harder, hence the name. This one was a breeze in the beginning as well. These guys with no armor stood no chance against my steel blade. I even tried to use some of the magic. I used a gravity spell to create a giant sphere with no gravity in it so I could easily take out my enemies. I ended up switching the sword for daggers and they worked great. Until the armored enemies came out again. I was basically doing nothing to their full suit of knight armor, so I ended up picking up a mace off of the ground and the blunt damage from that was more than enough to easily knock these guys out. After that, I tried the Circle of Death. It says it's a battle against many opponents, but as a sign of respect, only one will attack at a time. So kinda like Duels, except we have people watching us waiting for the moment the guy I'm attacking dies so he can hop in. This one was easy as well, and the axes I was using were actually doing decent damage to the guys in armor. Until all of a sudden, I walked backwards off the map. It took me so long to climb all the way back up that the enemies ended up forgetting about me. Then just for fun, I did a melee only against tier 1 enemies because it was satisfying to chop my way through a whole crowd of people like John Wick if he was alive in the medieval times. This was too easy and I ended up chopping off a lot of limbs. Then I kissed the statue, slapped it, and explored a little and actually found a cool room with another spawn book and some things to hang your weapons on. At the end of the day, I had so much fun playing this game. You end up getting so immersed that you can almost feel the weight of your enemies in your hand when you hold their bodies, and the combat is so satisfying when you block an enemy's attack and land a nice hit yourself. The Crystal Hunt mode is amazing and very repeatable. There's so many different ways you can take the strongholds, it's almost impossible for this game to get boring. And if for some reason it does end up getting boring, you just load up Sandbox and have so much fun again. Anyways, if you're still watching this video, I can't thank you guys enough for sticking to the end. This is my first video of this style, so let me know if you guys want to see more. And if you want to watch my last video or a random video of mine that YouTube thinks you'll like, then click here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.